You heard his message yesterday. He's not afraid to speak his mind. And when I heard him speaking, I thought about all the political organizations out there that would just like to see him gone. But we know that angels that excel in strength can protect us from all evil. And I want Robert to tell you the truth today. Do you want him to speak from his heart and to speak truthfully? Do you want him to hold anything back? Can you handle it? Don't answer so quickly. Robert, come share at Modern Manna's 10th Annual Health and Healing Crusade.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny. As Danny's walking off the stage, I want to remind him and all of you that we have some feedback. That God did create us in his image. And just imagine a world or a state of California with 1,000 Danny Vieiras. And you know what? Each one of you has the potential to take that passion and to change the world a little bit at a time. There's a Jewish saying that if you save one person, you've saved the world. And we call that a mitzvah, which is really, people translate the word mitzvah as a gift. But the actual translation of mitzvah, as in bar mitzvah, is commandment. It's God's commandment to do good deeds. I see that nobody has really thanked the actual ground that we're on, this Lodi Grape Festival. And as a Jew, we have a worship service, Shabbat Shalom, Good Sabbath. And there are two prayers that we say every Sabbath, and one of them, they're very short prayers, is Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen, which means, Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who createst the fruit of the vine. So thank you, people here. The second, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzei lechem min haaretz. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who bringest forth bread from the earth. Amen. The food that we have here, the bread from the earth that they are serving every single day, the bouquets that come out of that kitchen, the enchiladas that they made, and even the baked potatoes. To see the steam coming from that baked potatoes and the topping from that baked potatoes is enough to really get the salivary glands from really working. Thank you, God, for giving us those senses to see and to smell and to even hear food sizzling and cooking. There's no greater pleasure, human pleasure, than the gustatory and olfactory senses of great prepared food, the crunch of that fresh salad. I went into the kitchen yesterday after hours just to see what they were doing, and they were cutting lettuce, and I took a whole crate of lettuce and just chopped it up for them. So you're going to be eating today my handiwork. But food is so important, and there was a lady by the name of Ellen G. White who really talked about food. Today I'm going to talk about Ellen White, and I'm also going to talk about one of my favorite foods, the eggplant. And I'm going to give you the single best eggplant recipe ever done. Howard Lyman, I don't know if Howard has made it here yet. There are some great speakers following me today, people who have been doing my work much longer than I've been doing it. And as a great philosopher once said, that to do what I do, I stand upon the shoulder of giants. And you're going to hear today, after me, John McDougall, who has had one of the most enormous inspirational effects on me and educational effects. I learn from everybody. John McDougall is a saint, or one day will be. John McDougall. Howard Lyman, the reason I do not eat meat is because of Howard Lyman, because of that one man. And if you've never heard Howard speak, don't go anywhere. He speaks twice today. There's Lorraine Day and Charlotte Gerson, and you've got Danny Vieira, who imparts such wisdom. But the speakers here today is a day of perfection. Today, you're in the Garden of Eden with the food that you're going to eat and the Sabbath observance and the speakers and the wisdom that comes from them. There's just so much to share and so much to learn. And I've also been learning from you, and I really appreciate the fact that I'm out on the floor there with the other exhibitors. And by the way, those other exhibitors are all people of passion. Talk to them and share your thoughts with them and learn from them. But this to me is pure heaven. And I'm really enjoying myself here. I want to talk for a moment, before I get into Ellen G. White, I want to talk about my father. My father, Nat Cohen, today has been alive for 555 days, because 555 days ago he died. He had a massive stroke, his second stroke, and it was in an area of the brain, all the way in the back, in the pons and the medulla, that the neurologist cried in my arms. Her name is Kyla Brashears. She was a very dear family friend, and she said, "Your dad's not going to make it." And I looked at her, and I was a little sad, because it was a massive stroke. All of the tests showed that. And my dad's cardiologist, Jeff Mitchell, who I've known for 20 years, he's also a family friend. Jeff runs the New York Marathon every year. He's in terrific shape at age 60. And Jeff also was my dad's racquetball buddy. Well, that was 555 days ago. My dad, on July 6th, is going to be 88 years old, and he lived. And I said to both doctors, he's going to live. We're going to save his life. Dad couldn't talk. He couldn't walk. He couldn't open his eyes. He could only babble a little bit with tears coming down his face. He was aware of everything going on. And when he went into the convalescence center, to the nursing home, they brought to his room every single day for breakfast eggs and bacon. And I got the nutritionist, and I said, "That's what got him here." And I said, "Can't you give him vegan food? Can't you give him something else to eat?" And they couldn't. They were mandated by the state to serve certain rules. And working with the bureaucracy, we've all been there, how frustrating it can be. So each day, I got him into a nursing home that was less than a mile from my own home. And each day, I would stop in at 6 o'clock in the morning before the breakfast tray came, and I would bring my father medicine. I have the best medicine in the world, the best vitamin pill. I want you to write the name of this pill down, because it costs only $1 a day. It's called cantaloupe. It's this big round thing with seeds in it. And I would cut up fresh cantaloupe for him every single day, and fresh honeydew, and that's what Dad lived on. I would make soups for him at lunchtime. I would make a beautiful vegetable soup and a black bean soup. And I would do things for him for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I was preparing tofu burgers and veggie burgers and showing him how good vegetarian food can eat. But the thing that really capped it for him was when Dad finally came home after a month, and he could move a little bit, and he was making great progress. I brought over a series of tapes by John McDougall, and then I got a series of tapes by Hans Diehl, and Dad and Mom watched them together, and Mom's a great cook. And that's what she did, was prepare enormously, beautifully decorated fruit platters, the likes of which were prepared here yesterday in the food demonstrations. And that's what Dad eats every day now. He eats entirely a plant-based diet. And you know something? Life is wonderful, and every day is precious. And he's walking now. He drives the car. He goes to the health club every day. He doesn't play racquetball anymore, but he's working out every day at 88. Here's a little book I wrote called God's Nutritionist, but I really didn't write it. Ellen White wrote it. I've just taken Ellen White and I translated Ellen White from English into English. And I say that with a little bit of smile on my face, with all due reverence, because I adore Ellen White. But when I visited the Silver Spring, Maryland bookstore, the ministry there were about 40 young people working in the store, and I went from 1 to 1. I had the manuscript at that time with me. 1 to 1, nobody had read Ellen G. White. And I said, "Why not?" And they all said, "She's difficult to get through," and they just hadn't read her. So I knew then and there, I had read Ellen White. I write a column every single day on my website, notmilk.com. And I've been doing this for 5 years. So imagine writing a column every single day for 5 years on a variety of subjects. Every single day I do that, and I have thousands and thousands of readers, probably the largest Yahoo group daily column on the internet. And one day, one of my readers sent me the counsels on diet and foods. And I was happy to get a free book, and I put it in my bookcase and forgot about it for 3 years. Didn't even look at it. There it sat, and one night about 3 o'clock in the morning, I could not sleep, and somehow something directed me down there to that book. And I pulled the book out, and I started reading at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was up until the sun rose. And I announced to my wife, Lisa, that I've got to leave. I've got to go away. And I drove the 120 or so miles to my favorite place in the world, Montauk, New York, the very tip of eastern Long Island, where the ocean is magnificent, where the sand dunes are large. And I booked a room in a motel right on the beach, watched the waves and heard the terns and seagulls feeding on the fish, on the bait fish, and every morning breathed the fresh smell of the ocean air. And I started reading again for a second time the counsels. And I started taking notes and circling passages that I liked. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew it was important for me to get away and be alone and read and study Ellen White. And it ended up that I found and circled 500 of the most important things that I think she ever said about health and nutrition. And I made it very simple. And I'm very proud of the fact that many families now are using this book for Sabbath service at home, just to read from bit to bit. And I want to read something that I think is one of the most important things that Ellen White wrote, number 242 of 500. It is sacred duty for those who cook to learn how to prepare healthful food. Many souls are lost as a result of poor cooking. It takes thought and care to make good bread, but there is more religion in a loaf of good bread than they think. There are few really good cooks. Young women think it is menial to cook and do other kinds of housework. And for this reason, many girls who marry and have the care of families have little idea of the duties involved. Cooking, it's a requirement of ours, as Ellen White said, to teach our children how to cook. It's a critical requirement. To her, it was more important than teaching them music or literature. Learning how to cook and learning how to eat are the keys to not only great nutrition, but to satisfying, reaching, achieving your goals and getting those passions really developed. In order to know Jesus or to know any passion that you might have, learning how to eat a cleansing diet was the key to the first step in Ellen White's mission. And that's why she wrote so much about counsel on diet and foods. I have a second book coming out in October or November called Food for Thought, which is also Ellen White strictly from the Ministry of Healing. And it pains me that these young people have never read the Ministry of Healing, because this book is about family and about cleanliness and living and philosophy. And there's so much in it that I've taken between 400 and 500 quotations and done something special. And the special thing I did was I spent about 6 months with every single one of the Ellen White quotations. And in the middle, I was screaming at myself. I felt like the agony and the ecstasy here, painting the Sistine Chapel. Every time Ellen White spoke, I took a quote from literature or from science. I took Kierkegaard and Nietzsche and Kant and Thomas Edison and Einstein and Ayn Rand and John Kennedy, and I took quotations from them mirroring the quotation from her. So that when you look at the entirety of the book, and Hans Diehl has agreed, it's a blessing to write the foreword. Agatha Thrash did the first foreword to this book. When you look at the book in its entirety, you're looking at a woman who is probably the greatest philosopher in the history of humankind. I know the criticisms, I know the bad things that people have said about Ellen White, but the entirety of her work is such a blessing that this woman is to be revered. And my mission is to get Jews and Muslims and Mormons and Lutherans and Baptists and every religion to see who Ellen White was, because I'm going to double the population of this church, and you're going to help me. Another passage, very short one. Let the diet reform be progressive. Let the people be taught how to prepare food without the use of milk or butter. Tell them that the time will soon come when there will be no safety in using eggs, milk, cream, or butter, because disease in animals is increasing in proportion to the increase of wickedness among men. Now, Howard Lyman is going to be here today, and Howard and I have a little secret. We share a secret, and it's a lot of fun, but sometimes it's a little disappointing, that we have in our bodies something called a smell meter. We know. We know when you've been bad. We know you've been naughty. We know when you're eating eggs. We know when you're eating milk and butter, because we can smell it. We can smell it from about 5 feet away. And Howard, you ask him about that, and he'll tell you it's the truth. The Japanese people used to call Americans the butter people because of the raunchy, rancid, horrible smell coming from our bodies. You walk into the woods, animals know a vegan from a meat eater. And you know something? When you become the vegan, and there are many vegans I've spoken to, and I do the smell meter test, they really are. And by the way, I spoke at a vegan festival a few years ago in Colorado. I spoke 14 times during a 7-day period, and I was cranky at the end, and on the way to Kansas City, I had to drive through the night, and my last talk was late in the day, and there were about 100 people in the auditorium, and it was a vegan festival, the Vegan Association. And I asked the question, how many of you are vegans? And everybody raised your hand. And I said, no, you're not. Cut the vegan bologna. You're not. I can smell you. And now, how many of you, tell the truth, have eaten pizza this summer or ice cream? And the hands went up. I said, that's okay. Everybody slips up a little bit. I know many very famous vegans who occasionally slip up or occasionally eat. They go to Thanksgiving dinner at their family's house, and out of politeness, they eat the turkey. It happens. But Ellen White really was the first to recognize the real science that 100 years later would prove that eating these things don't do your body any good. And after my dad had my stroke, again, I like to fantasize about people in history who do things and really get themselves into trouble. And I always get myself into trouble. You probably can tell. But at the end of this book, I wrote 10 rules for better health care. Because Dad had the stroke in December 16th, 2002. And, of course, what's after December 16th? It's Christmas time. And a few days before Christmas, the nutritionist from this nursing home sent around the Christmas menu for Christmas dinner. And it was roast beef, au jus, with asparagus with hollandaise sauce, and a baked potato with sour cream, and remarkably, coconut cream pie for dessert. I screamed. Ice cream. It was horrible. It was a horrible menu. And again, I got the person, the manager of the nursing center, and I said, how could you do this? You're killing these people. All of these people convalescing from strokes, you're giving them things. That's why I live a mile away. That's why I see the ambulances here all the time, because people are here and then they die. You're giving them things that are horrible for their bodies. So I took from Ellen White 10 rules for better health care. And again, I'm going to read them for you because they're lovely. I wrote them on a piece of paper, so they fit on one piece of paper. And I came to the nursing home, and I put them up on every bulletin board on all 3 floors, okay? I felt like nailing it to the front door. Ellen White, 10 rules I'm going to read you, and they're just, each one in itself is wonderful. These people have lived improperly on rich food. They are suffering as a result of indulgence of appetite. Our reform in their habits of eating and drinking is needed. But this reform cannot be made all at once. The change must be made gradually. And for any of you who is a meat eater, who's eating that standard American diet that Howard Lyman is going to talk about, the change does have to be made gradually. And Howard will explain to you later today that if we were giving advice to the average meat eater, we would say, give up all milk and dairy first. Do that the first month, because that's where you're going to see the most profound difference. And the second change is going to be, give up all poultry. Now, most people, vegetarians, give up red meat first, but poultry, and Howard will tell you why. And the third change, give up the fish. Leave the red meat for last, based upon the damage that it does to your body. So we have the list of things to do, and Ellen White told you, the change must be made gradually. You can't do it all at once, because doing it all at once, you don't feel the changes. You don't appreciate. It's slow, but it works. And rule number 2, it is the duty of the physician to see that wholesome food is provided, and it should be prepared in a way that will not create disturbances in the human organism. The physician, the clueless American physician. The physician who goes to medical school and rarely takes a course on nutrition, They don't have a clue. I spoke to a woman yesterday whose child has Crohn's disease, just diagnosed. And she said, my doctor told me that diet has nothing to do with Crohn's disease. And I said to her, in 1996, the National Academy of Sciences published a paper that showed that 100% of people with Crohn's disease test positive for a bacterium, Mycobacterium paratuberculosis, that you get from dairy cows. 100%. And that there was a doctor in Orlando, Florida, and I gave her the phone number, 407-629-8121, of Dr. Ira Shafran, who welcomes your calls or the calls from your gastroenterologist. And not only does everyone with Crohn's disease test positive for that bacteria, but irritable bowel syndrome, 40 million Americans. 1 out of 7 Americans, 1 out of 7 people in this room may be struck with irritable bowel syndrome. Difficult, if not impossible, to get rid of because that bacteria lodges in the gut. So there is a protocol to get rid of it. One doctor I know is doing that with antibiotics intravenously. But it works because he recognizes what it is. Rule number 3, physicians who use flesh meat and prescribe it for their patients should not be employed in our institutions, because they fall decidedly in educating the patients to discard that which makes them sick. The physician who uses and prescribes meat does not reason from cause or effect, and instead of acting as a restorer, he leads the patients by his own example to indulge perverted appetite. How can a meat-eating physician do this? By his wrong habits, he trammels his work and cripples his usefulness. What language she used, what poetry. How beautiful she was. And the words that she left behind are just such inspiration. Rule number 4, when a physician sees a patient suffering from disease caused by improper eating and drinking or other wrong habits, yet neglects to tell him of this, he is doing his fellow being an injury. Those who understand the principles of life should be in earnest in striving to counteract the causes of disease. Wow. Ellen White wrote this 150 years ago. Whew. Rule number 5, a quickie. An important part of the nurse's duty is the care of the patient's diet. When they brought that bacon on that tray, when they brought the chicken soup and the egg, my goodness, what they were doing to this man or anybody else. Does it taste delicious? Sure. I passed last night, I drove around before Jennifer and I celebrated our Sabbath, a Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I have my testimony before you to give to you that when I passed the Kentucky Fried Chicken and I smelled that chicken, I salivated. I remember 10 years ago when I was eating this stuff, and it still smells good to me, okay? And then I started thinking about the chickens and the deaths and the debeaking of the chickens and the horrible conditions living their entire lives in 8 by 8 inch squares. And that's the new compassionate size for them. It used to be 7 by 7, which is ridiculous. So yeah, but it tastes good. And the same thing with cheese, but it tastes good. It's a wonderful taste, but it's not something that does your body any good. Maybe that's the temptation that's given to us. And maybe we have to use that abstinence. Rule number 6, the patients are to be provided with an abundance of wholesome, palatable food, prepared and served in so appetizing a way that they will have no temptation to desire flesh meat. The meals may be made the means of an education in health reform. Care is to be shown in regard to the combinations of food given to the patients. I walk into families, to homes, and see no fruit there, and yet you go to the supermarket. Have a mango today. Have those apples and oranges. This morning when I ate breakfast again, as I do every day while I'm here in the hotel, I was so happy when somebody patted me on the back and I turned around. There's a young woman who's probably here right now, and she brought her own container of soy milk to the buffet. Hooray! And I was squeezing the oranges and into my orange juice and getting a strange look. There's always oranges at a bar, at a buffet bar. And to go and push that thing under the fake orange juice, or the stuff that comes from trees reconstituted with water, that's dead, and to make your own live orange juice, what a difference. Make your own live apple cider. I buy apples all year long and make my own apple cider, and it's not pasteurized, and it is magnificent because the life fills you. You can feel God's life and wisdom into creating a fruit that just bursts with enzymes and isoflavones and bioflavonoids. And so rule number 8 is quickly let fruit be placed on the table in abundance. It's real simple. And your home must have fruit in abundance. And if you have children who never eat fruit, you've got to do something important. You get up 5 minutes earlier than they do, and you cut the fruit for them. And you deliver a plate while they're still unconscious in bed and getting up, and bring it into the bathroom when they're spending 40 minutes doing their hair. And you give it to them at night when they're on the computer or watching television. You give them the fruit. Not the 6 portions a day that USDA recommends. Not the dead apple juice, which they consider to be a portion of fruit. Not the ketchup that's now considered to be a portion of vegetable. But give them the freshly cut fruit. That is a blessing. That is a commandment. That is something that Ellen White inspires us with, and it makes sense. Rule number 8, we must remember that the habits and practices of a lifetime cannot be changed in a moment. With an intelligent cook and an abundant supply of wholesome food, reforms can be brought about that will work well, but it may take time to bring them about. Remember that. It takes a little time, but with patience and love and delicious prep, learn how to cook, play, experiment. Your kitchen is a toy room, and all of those appliances are toys, and play with them, and just enjoy, and teach your children too. The next to last rule, number 9, is the food placed before them must necessarily be more varied in kind than would be necessary in a home family. Let the diet be such that a good impression will be made on the guests. This is a matter of great importance. The patronage of a sanitarium will be larger if a liberal supply of appetizing food is provided. Get those Morningstar sausages, the vegan sausages, and the vegan burgers, and the vegan hot dogs, which, by the way, they're serving here. They are so delicious. And Jennifer each day goes for her lunch or her dinner, for the hot dog, for the burger, and it's wonderful food. Last rule, fresh air, exercise, pure water, excuse me a second, pure water, and clean, sweet premises. Sweet, clean premises. The study of God's will, okay? It's an important part of who we are. Sweet premises are within the reach of all, but with little expense. But drugs are expensive, both in the outlay of means and the effect produced upon the system. Those are Ellen G. White's 10 rules of health reform, the way I wrote them, the way I want you, if you visit a nursing home, convalescent center, to put them on a bulletin board and let the people see it and send it to the dietitians, because we got to teach the way they teach. Because right now they're teaching with ignorance. They learn their education from schools that are financed by the dairy industry and the meat producers. Medicine, you don't need medicine. Medicine is just causing a cascade of dominoes to fall, and they cause more problems. I've got to talk to you about cholesterol, because everybody's conscious of their cholesterol, because cholesterol is a way we measure the health of the heart, supposedly. And what we do with cholesterol is kind of remarkable, because there are 2 kinds of cholesterol. So everybody knows I've got healthy cholesterol and I've got unhealthy cholesterol. Do you think God instructed your body to make unhealthy cholesterol? We have LDL, which some people call lethal cholesterol, which is low-density lipoprotein cholesterol, which people call the bad cholesterol. Let me tell you the purpose of LDL cholesterol. If you live in a home or an apartment and you have pictures hanging on your walls, and you sell your house or leave your apartment and a new person comes and occupies that space, they're going to have to deal with the holes that you left behind. And what do? They go to the hardware store and they get a can of spackle. And they take the spackle and they apply it to the hole, and then they smooth it out. LDL cholesterol is spackle. You've got things causing atrial damage to your heart, things that you do each day. And the worst thing that you do to cause damage to your heart, if you leave lawn furniture out on the lawn in the wintertime and it rusts, when it rains, when it rusts, the worst thing you do is breathe. Oxygenation causes damage. That's why people speak so highly of antioxidants. Now, I'm not going to suggest you stop breathing, okay? But recognize that you're constantly repairing the damage due to oxygen. Ask your physician, and I bet you he or she will not be able to answer, why it is that people have arterial damage, and why don't people have vein damage? Think about that for a moment. People have artery problems. The arteries are clogged, they're damaged, they've got atherosclerosis, sclerotic plaquing. Well, because your body's constantly repairing the damage in the arteries, but the blood goes through the veins too. But the blood in your veins is a different color than the blood in your arteries. The blood in your veins is blue. You can look and see. The blood in your arteries is red because it's got oxygen in it. Once the oxygen is out, it's not causing damage to the blood in your veins. Same God made the same arteries and veins, but you don't have damage in your veins. So oxygen causes a problem. So recognize, by definition, if you're living and breathing, you're causing damage to your heart by oxygenation. You've never heard this from a doctor before, because they don't know, because they don't study this in medical school. Forgive them for their ignorance. They learn a lot, they memorize, they regurgitate on the test, they keep some of it in their heads, and then when you get sick, you come to their office, they look at a physician's desk reference and give you a pill. And that's their solution to help mask the symptoms that made you sick. The best doctor in the world, well, in my opinion, it's John McDougall, but other than that, the best doctor in the world is you. Because you're the one who listens to your body, and you've got to listen. You know what's ailing you. Sometimes people go to doctors, I've got a pain in my chest or over here, and they listen, they take blood, they find nothing, they say maybe it's up here. But it's not up there. Quite often we get from cows a bacteria called Clostridium, which lodges in the diaphragm of a cow and causes pain in the diaphragm of a cow, causes pain in you too. So by eating these diseased animals, Ellen White warned us that a day is going to come that God is going to show us a sign that these diseased animals and their body fluids and the eggs are not good to eat. You know, the last day that God showed us a clue was yesterday, because if you read the papers, you'll see that another mad cow was found in America. Isn't that something? What a surprise that there were more mad cows. USDA is so secretive, they won't even tell us what state it came from. And they're testing it now, and they say the test is going to take about 2 weeks, while actually the test takes 1 day, but they're taking 2 weeks because they've got to get the meat industry prepared for the worst. And then somehow, like the last one that happened in Texas, they're going to lose the sample and destroy it. And that's what happens because they're there to protect the meat industry. Who protects you? You. By eating these things, you're the one who really places jeopardy, your health, in jeopardy. So what do doctors do? We're talking about the heart, we're talking about cholesterol. You've got damage. There are a lot of things that many great scientists have identified as causing the damage to the heart. Another one of those is an enzyme in cow's milk called XO. X stands for xanthine oxidase. And bovine xanthine oxidase, there were 2 Connecticut cardiologists in the 70s, Oster and Ross, who determined over the course of 5 years that 300 heart attack victims all produced antibodies to XO. It destroyed in the atrium, in the heart cells, it destroyed 1/3 of the packaging material of the cells, plasmalogen. The exposure to this bovine protein, which by theory, scientists say it's destroyed by digestion. It's not destroyed because they were producing antibodies to it. This is scientific evidence that drinking cow's milk works to help cause atrial damage, which helps promote heart disease. Last summer, I had a wonderful conversation with Dr. William Castelli, who happens to be the lead researcher in the largest heart study in American history, the Framingham, Massachusetts Heart Study. And in that study, for 30 years, they're the ones who provided the information that cholesterol causes heart disease, saturated animal fat causes heart disease. Every step of the way, they've published about 200 significant papers about heart disease, telling us what causes heart disease. So if nothing else, this man is the leading edge of what causes heart disease and what should be known about heart disease. And I said, Dr. Castelli, what causes heart disease? What are people looking at today, scientists doing the research? And he didn't even hesitate. He said, homocysteine, not fat or cholesterol, homocysteine. And I said, well, where does homocysteine come from? He said, well, you make it in your body. I said, exactly where? And he said, well, you eat it and you make it in your body, the byproducts. And I said, but where? And he really couldn't go any further. He just knew homocysteine because they can measure it. And I had previously, one of my daily columns, I wrote a column about protein. And I went and I looked at proteins from fish, from beef, from chicken, from tofu. And I took those 4 items and I broke down and did a statistical analysis because I taught college statistics. I did a Pearson-R moment correlation test on the different amino acids as they relate to each other. So I took 28 different amino acids and I measured the amount in each one. And I found out that there's a key amino acid, methionine, which has as its center atom sulfur, and we know that rotten egg smell, which I spoke about yesterday. Imagine the rotten egg smell infusing into your blood and then being spread to every cell of your body. That stinks, which means the inside of you stinks, which means your breath stinks, which is why Howard and I can smell you if you're eating eggs. And this amino acid, methionine, this sulfur, does not do your body any good because the greatest rates of bone disease and cancer, and heart disease, are in the countries eating the most animal protein, milk being liquid meat. Milk is most of our diet. So methionine is a key to heart disease. Why? If you look at the way the body works, when you eat that sulfur, and you create a sulfur acidic condition in your blood, God did a good job designing this body because we neutralize the acid by going to the vault in our body where calcium is stored. And what is that vault called? It's our skeletal system. So we take calcium from our bones. So if you're approaching the M word, menopause, or passing it, and you're going to lose 1% of your bone density every year, what you want to recognize is by eating animal protein, milk, cheese, butter, ice cream, yogurt, beef, chicken, fish, you are creating that acid condition which must be neutralized by leaching calcium out of your bones. You don't want to do that, men or women. There's a woman who I know, Ruth Heydrich, who runs triathlons, competes in triathlons, where she actually gets in the water and swims 2.3 miles, and then she gets on a bicycle and races 110 miles, and then she runs a marathon. And Ruth is in her 70s. And she has got the greatest bone density of any 70-year-old woman living because of stress-bearing exercise, because she's a vegan. And that's where it's at. Ellen White didn't know the science that we have today. And that's why in God's Nutritionist, 500 of her thoughts, but I also have 100 quotations from scientific journals supporting this. So you've got your body making this unhealthy cholesterol, supposedly, this LDL cholesterol, which is actually fixing the holes, repairing the damage that's made by all of these bad things that we do to it. And your healthy cholesterol, the high-density lipoprotein, is sandpaper. It's smoothing out the walls. So it's repairing a lot of that damage and the HDL work. So here, your body is doing the right thing. You're getting damage. And the doctors are measuring your cholesterol going, wow, you've got a lot of that bad cholesterol, LDL, your cholesterol count is so high, let's give you Lipitor. Let's give you a drug that lowers your cholesterol. Oh no, what are we doing? God gave us a plan to deal with what was causing the damage by making that low-density lipoprotein. And God is also screaming, going, no, not the Lipitor. You take the Lipitor, and what happens? You take away the body's ability to make the cholesterol that repairs the damage. This is not clever. So 2 years after Lipitor was approved, doctors, scientists found that it was causing more trouble than it was curing. And this is God's way sometimes. Sometimes there is so much wisdom that we get a little bit of a surprise. There's wisdom all around you, tapping you on the shoulder, and quite often we ignore it. But these cholesterol-lowering drugs, what are they doing? They're masking the symptoms and taking away the body's ability to cure the problem. And what's the problem? You're the problem. You're eating the problem. As Howard Lyman says, the most dangerous weapons of mass destruction are the knife and fork. And you're the one doing it to yourself. So don't eat the meat. Don't eat the milk and cheese. As Ellen White said, the time is going to come. Even though she owned 2 dairy cows, and she would occasionally have milk in her tea. And I've spoken to a few dozen people these last couple of days who've told me, did you know that Ellen White occasionally ate meat, and she occasionally did this and that, and there were a lot of accusations. I said, yeah, it's a shame she was human. Okay? People do things. Many of the finest speakers in the vegetarian movement, I know some of their secrets. We used to go to Chinese restaurants and not order meat, but the stock would be made with chickens. I knew it. I used to get a muffin. It was made with eggs. I knew it. I don't do that any longer now. I'm so strict. I cannot eat M&Ms or I cannot eat Hershey's Kisses because it's a kiss of death. I don't eat that stuff because it's milk. It's milk chocolate. And I don't want any of that in me. Not only for the animals who die, and that's part of the problem. As a Jew, I have many members of my family who died during the Holocaust. And during a 5-year period, 7 million Jews died, and probably Seventh-day Adventists, they went after them first. They went after the vegetarians. They went after the gypsies. They went after people who didn't fit into that norm. And 7 million, 10 million people died during that 5 to 7 year period. Today, 27 million animals are going to have a knife put to their throat and put into their throat and ripped through their jugular vein and die in fear and pain. Okay, and it's tragic. And I know dairy farmers who recognize and call their cows by name. These are sentient beings, sentient. They're aware of everything going on. They've lived lives and they have love and they have feelings and emotions. As a matter of fact, sentient, they're more aware of things than we are. We're not sentient beings because there are, if you look at the beautiful rainbow, the rainbow diet, the colors of the rainbow, there's 7 colors in the rainbow: violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. But there are actually 9 colors in the rainbow. There's ultraviolet and infrared. We cannot see ultraviolet and infrared, but certain animals can, and they can see, the insects can see ultraviolet and infrared, so they can see 2 times more. They can see that extra 28% actually, more than we can. And you know what? They can smell things more than we can. I saw a dog smelling somebody the other day, and the person said, "Oh, that dog must smell my dog." No. That dog doesn't read the newspaper or watch TV, but that dog smells you and knows who you've been with and where you've been, and if you're a woman, what time of the month it is, and everything about you. Because if you open up the inside of your nose, it's this big, like a baseball. If you open up the inside of the dog's nose, it's like this. There are receptors there for smell, and that's why walking into the woods, the deer puts her head up and smells a meat eater and runs. And with a vegan, talk to any vegan about how vegans relate to animals. They know we're not going to eat them because they don't smell death on our breath. We smell it. And we know that these chemical messengers communicate a message, a very important message. Just like inside of you, chemicals communicate important messages. God designed a perfect machine here. Where chemicals, we have different neurotransmitting substances, acetylcholine, acetylcholinesterase, serotonin, L-DOPA, that send signals from one part of the brain. And when you're eating something that's causing lots of mucus and lots of sludge, your thinking is delayed, your reaction time is lower, your lung capacity is not as good. You lose 15% of that lung capacity by drinking a glass of milk because of the mucus created by the casein and the histamines that are produced. And you want clear lungs? It's incredible, the difference, and you're going to feel it by giving up milk and dairy for that first week. Ellen G. White wrote these things. We see animals who have to suffer. 27 million today. Imagine 27 million animals go to the slaughterhouses. I was driving here from my home in New Jersey. Every time I passed one of those slaughterhouses on wheels, one of those trucks carrying the cows or the pigs, it's a sad moment for me to know that a cow grows up on a farm. Every time she births a baby, the baby is separated from her. And farmers have nightmares about the crying that goes on to be separated from a child. If you're a vegetarian who's so-called compassionate and eating dairy products, you're responsible in your lifetime for about 3 of those cows and 3 of those calves. Those calves are separated from mother, they cry too. The veal industry, the male calves, 4.5 million a year, don't go to the veal industry. 600,000 a year go to the veal industry. The other 3.9 million are separated from mom, and they get a bullet in the head, and they're buried on the North 40 because it's too expensive to raise most cattle for veal. Only on factory farms do they do that. So we've got millions of cows slaughtered right after birth. The pain for the mother. And then, in the middle of the night, she's taken out of the herd because she's no longer making that 24.5 quarts a day. When she's no longer producing the way the farmer finds it economical, she's shipped to the auction ring, so onto the truck, off of the truck, cattle prod to the rump. That hurts. And she doesn't know where she is, and there are a bunch of men smoking cigars with smoke filling the room, bidding 27 cents a pound to buy their bodies, and they're kicked and they're shoved and back on the truck down to the slaughterhouse. And that's the way it works for these poor animals. And you wouldn't do it to your dog. Pigs are certainly considered to be smarter than dogs. You wouldn't do it to your dog or pig, or you wouldn't do it even to your wife. This is a tough thing to go through. Okay, it's painful, and it's torture. Look me up on the internet, Robert Cohen. Go to google.com, and you're going to see a lot of nice things and a lot of really awful things. Okay, I am a professional troublemaker, and everywhere I go, I get people angry at me, okay? And 2 years ago, I had an incident where I wrote a paper on a phony study that was done in Sweden, Annette Hardiker's cancer study. Exactly the opposite conclusion. She said drinking milk prevents breast cancer. And there have been a series of great articles. Drinking milk prevents colon cancer, breast cancer, and they're all phony. And I look at the articles, and having done research in neuroendocrinology, I know how to read a scientific study. So I write about these phony studies financed by the dairy industry. And when I did that, I had many vegetarians on the internet say I'm a fanatic and I'm crazy and I'm wrong. And I got banned from appearing at different talks and conferences because of my outspoken ways, which is fine. It was a tough time for me. And then I realized during that time that this is wonderful. This is important. And there was one person who led the anti-Robert Cohen movement. And as a matter of fact, if you even went to his website and mentioned my name, you'd be banned from his website for life. So you'll find his vegetarian site, which is a wonderful website, on my website. And I wrote a column about him saying that love, it's about love. It's about turning the other cheek, and it's about recognizing that even your adversaries, your enemies, have something important to teach me. And in my book, God's Nutritionist, I actually acknowledge many people who have taught me many things, and he's one of them. And he's in my acknowledgments, which probably makes steam come out of his ears. But again, he does good work on his internet site. But the important thing is, he gave me a set of tools. And the tools he gave me are so important. He gave me a suit of armor. And the suit of armor are allowing me to take all of the pain that I create and I'm about to create. Because I have a confession, and this is the first time I'm ever going to say this publicly. And it won't be the last time, but this is the first time. I know how to end animal abuse, and I know how to create 100 million vegetarians in America, and I intend to do that. And I figured that I would let you applaud before I tell you what I'm going to do, because what I'm going to do is very, very bad to some people, and some people are going to curse me, and I bless Howard Lyman for wishing me luck on this and giving me his blessings. Paul McCartney said a number of years ago when his wife Linda was alive, that if slaughterhouses were built with glass walls, everybody would be a vegetarian. Now, if you've ever seen the slaughter of an animal, there's something called arterial spray, where when the throat is cut, the artery sprays blood so that it will go in either direction as the animal is writhing in pain, either direction for 15 to 20 feet. The blood squirts out as the heart pumps it out. It keeps squirting. And to witness that is, as Nietzsche said, you can never understand life until you hold death in your hands. You truly, at that moment, can understand life. And you can understand the sanctity of life and the fact of why God told us the proper foods he's given us to eat in Genesis 1:29. When you see an animal die, it is a painful experience. And most Americans don't see animals die. when I stood next to the 3 meat producers 2 years ago at America's largest animal rights convention in Washington, D.C., and Ingrid Newkirk from the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals stood up and she gave one of the most powerful speeches I've ever heard on animal rights, and she got a standing ovation even from the meat producers. It hit me. They're applauding her because she's helping to promote additional consumption of meat. Think about this. Compassionate animal slaughter. When the Jews were led to their deaths in the Treblinka death camps, in the concentration camps, when they were gassed, when they were shot, do you know that there was wonderful music, just like the wonderful music we heard here today, a violin concerto, playing music as they marched to the showers, which calmed the Jews. And we do the same thing in slaughterhouses. Temple Grandin is a woman who they say is dyslexic, but she produces the most compassionate animal slaughter ramps, where animals are not fearful anymore when they go to their death. They don't see the dark shadows. They walk on soft carpeting. They walk down ramps where gravity takes them into a bath which cleanses them. They come out of it and go and proceed to be slaughtered to death. So what we've done now is pass Congress, because of the lobbying of animal rights groups, compassionate animal slaughter laws. And I think that if the animals had the opportunity to see what the humans were doing in their name, they would hold a tribunal, just like the Nuremberg war crimes, and hold the people who were the animal rights movement responsible for their deaths. Because compassionate slaughter eases the consciences of people. So, Paul and Linda McCartney said, if slaughterhouses had glass walls, everybody would be a vegetarian. I've suffered tremendous pain through criticism in the vegetarian movement from some people. I have a suit of armor. I'm ready to accept the pain because I plan on opening up a slaughterhouse. I cannot go into one and film it. Nobody will let me because that would be the end of their industry. I'm going to have animals die so that every young person in America can go on the internet and at 8 p.m. see a cow die, and at 9 p.m. a calf die, and at 10 p.m. a pig die. And when you see the death, you will be touched. I will have a 3-camera shoot. I will have lighting like this on a soundstage. Since I've produced some television, I know the effect of proper lighting. And animals will die, and people will curse me. And I'm ready to accept the pain because I wish to create 100 million vegetarians. And when I do, Ellen G. White's words are going to be found by many people, by the Jews and the Muslims, and every religion is going to see the wisdom of a vegetarian diet. And that's what she was talking about. Because to find God is to have clarity. To eat animals is to deny your body of clarity. And that's my mission. Ellen G. White is going to be the way. Seventh-day Adventism is going to be the way that people are going to find support in vegetarianism and wisdom. Thank you all very much for coming today.
Hi, I'm Charmaine Vieira. I am standing here in front of Bella Vita Lifestyle Center. Through these doors, many suffering spiritually, mentally, and physically find relief and are filled with gratitude as God works on their heart. Great light has been given to God's church on health reform. As the right arm of the third angel's message, God's methods of treating disease will open doors for the entrance of present truth to prepare souls for the soon coming of Jesus Christ. Here at Modern Manna, we have successfully led the way in a cleansing and detoxifying program that not only touches the body, but also reaches to soul and spirit. We have found that Christ's method of ministry brings true healing. In Volume 7 of the Testimonies, page 62, we are told, "We have come to a time when every member of the church should take hold of the medical missionary work. RISEN, an acronym for our Remedial and Integrated School of Evangelism and Naturopathy, will empower you to answer the call to medical missionary work. Our program is based on the natural hygiene blueprint of the early pioneers, incorporating the 8 laws of health, cleansing and detoxification. Learn how you can live optimally and coach people to healing from the diseases of lifestyle. Graduates of our Natural Hygiene Coach certification come from all around the world. They are motivated, resourceful, dedicated, and are making a difference through opening their own lifestyle education homes, coaching individuals, working within their local churches and communities, and broadening workplace wellness opportunities. Don't miss out on our upcoming 14-day Natural Hygiene Coach certification program. To find out how you can be involved with this amazing movement, visit us at www.modernmanna.org and click on Risen to register for the Fundamentals of Natural Hygiene. This online instruction is a prerequisite course that prepares you to successfully complete the Natural Hygiene Coach certification. Jesus says in Luke 10, verse 2, "The laborers are few." Now is the time to join us. He is waiting.